Hi everyone, this is Chris Pickett. I'm the director of Indivisible Montgomery, coming to you this week from my lovely basement. I'm sorry that we couldn't get together yesterday for our monthly meeting. As you know, all of our events have been canceled because of the coronavirus and the spread of COVID-19. We appreciate that all of you are doing everything you can to stay distant from one another and prevent the spread of this very serious disease. It's incredibly important that we conduct this social distancing and not have large events so that we can prevent the spread of the disease and hopefully get our community and our country as healthy as we possibly can as soon as we can. Our next in-person meeting, typically we skip the month of April for our meetings, so we are scheduled to get together again at the end of May 30th. I'm really hoping that we will be in a place where we can get together then, but if not, we'll figure out the contingency plan when we get to that point. So a question that a lot of people have had is how can we still be activists in this time of social distancing when we are not getting together for various events, to do our actions, to write letters, to have text banks or phone banks, or go up to hearings on Capitol Hill or have rallies. There's still quite a few things we can do, and just to give a preview of some of the areas where we are planning to work, of course, this all centers around coronavirus. As I just said, it's incredibly important that we keep our distance from people, and that's because of the way that, or just how infectious this disease is. Typically, one infected person goes on average to infect 2 to 4 other people. And if those people go on and infect 2 to 4 other people, you can see how this grows exponentially and very quickly. However, if you take out specific links in that chain, you can really reduce the spread of the virus and flatten the curve, as has been said, with regard to spreading the virus. So that's what we're doing. Importantly, in Maryland, we've had about 250 cases so far. That's what the Maryland Department of Public Health reported today. We have been on a trajectory, as many other places have been that had not yet contained the virus, of cases increasing by about a third every day. And because it takes about 2 weeks for any kind of social distancing effect to have some kind of clear effect on the spread of the virus, we've only been doing this for 1 week. We should expect cases to grow by about a third every day until sometime this weekend, which means we'll probably reach 2,000 cases in Maryland. And again, this isn't to scare anyone. This is meant to just be informative. This is what we should expect until we see the effects of our social distancing kick in. Because after this weekend, the question then is, how long does it take us to hit 4,000 cases or 6,000 or 8,000 cases? Because it should take, if our social distancing is working, it should take a much longer time to reach those benchmarks. So that's what we're really looking for. Again, I appreciate that you are doing your part. We started Indivisible Montgomery to build a community of activists, and staying home, doing your part for social distancing is really the biggest act of social solidarity and community solidarity that we can do right now. So again, thank you for doing your part. Now, when it comes to activism and making our voices heard, we still have a lot of opportunities. The first is focused on the federal government. So there are a few areas that we can make our voices heard on this. So first of all is testing for COVID-19. Now, if you've been following the news at all, you know that tests in the United States are in very short supply. You know that countries that have gotten coronavirus under control have done extensive testing for the disease. And so it's important that we have a very strong testing regimen in this country. The federal government has clearly fallen down on the job. Vice President Pence said that we would have 4 million tests in the field as of the end of this past week. Roughly 200 to 250,000 Americans have been tested for COVID-19. That's about 5% of what was promised. So that is clearly unacceptable. The federal government has clearly failed to help states contain this disease. And in some states like New York and California, they've even said that containment is no longer a possibility and are suggesting that people who only show serious symptoms and go to the hospital get tested. Nevertheless, testing is a critical component to any strategy to come out of this and to understand whether or not we are coming out of this prematurely and more people will be infected if we relieve the social distancing too early, or if we're actually right on track. So we need to press the federal government and our members of Congress to do better with testing of people for COVID-19. Now, the administration has said that they are not willing to make officials available for hearings during the pandemic. This is completely unacceptable. The federal government has clearly not been coming through with their promise to support and produce these tests en masse for the population. So was the vice president lying? Was someone lying to the vice president? Or are there other hiccups in the supply chain that have not become public that we need to know about? Congress needs to investigate this. This needs to be public, and we need to solve the problem. This isn't about the administration saving face. It's about solving the problem. So another place that we can make a difference in the federal government is to, as you've likely heard, there are a number of shortages of personal protective equipment for people in hospitals and a number of other things. There are a lot of tweets and other bits on social media that have gone viral of people showing how you can make homemade masks and homemade goggles and things like that. We should not be in this position where people have to fashion personal protective equipment to keep themselves safe from a pandemic out of things that they might find in their house. It's great that people are doing it, and I'm really inspired that people have figured this out. But the federal government should have stepped in long ago to make sure that these things were being produced to protect the people that we need to protect the rest of us. So there is a mechanism. The president can invoke the Defense Production Act, which would allow him to direct various companies and factories to switch production to the types of equipment that is needed to protect the country. That has not been invoked. The President Trump, has said several times that he's going to do it or he has done it. It's all fake. He hasn't done it yet. We need this to happen. Some companies have volunteered to say that they're going to do it, but we need the president to actually do the job of being president and to step up and to tell the companies what is needed. Invoking the act would remove a number of regulations that are holding some things back or possibly slowing things down. And at a time where we need large-scale production of a variety of things, including masks, we need the federal government working for the people by taking the steps that it has at its disposal. So we'll be calling our members of Congress to either in legislation that is being discussed now or through their own mechanisms of talking to the media, of really hammering the president to invoke the Defense Production Act. And finally, at the level of the federal government, there is a massive piece of legislation moving through the House and the Senate right now that would be a stimulus package for the country. This is targeted to save jobs, to save companies, to try to really float the economy for as long as we might need it to be floated. There are a number of bad aspects to these bills. Some of the earlier versions of the bills would have given less money to poorer people simply because they were poorer. That doesn't make any sense. We are all experiencing this crisis. We all need the support of the federal government. There are a number of other poor provisions in some of these bills, and negotiations are ongoing. So between now when I'm taping this and when you're viewing this, things may have changed. But as of right now, what's been produced and been talked about does not seem like something that we should be getting behind. We need something that actually supports the American people, that supports workers, that is not a corporate bailout, that does not give the Secretary of the Treasury a slush fund to divert to wherever he wants, including potentially the president's own pockets. That is not necessary to have. It's not important for our economy. There are a lot of other ways that money can be used and other people who can use it better. So we will be following that closely, and if necessary, we will be calling our senators and our members of the House to vote against that bill if necessary. If it meets all of our check marks and will be good for our country, then we'll be calling for them to support it. But for right now, we're a little wary of it. So shifting to the state level for a little bit, Governor Hogan has imposed this social distancing and closed down a lot of parts of Maryland. I think he's done a fine job, definitely better than a lot of other governors, even presidents. But there are other things that he could be doing. He could, cause Maryland to go into complete and total shutdown, much like California has done and other parts of the country have done as well. This is a step that could and probably should be taken to make sure that we limit the spread of COVID-19 as much as possible. So one thing we want to call and talk to the governor about this week is what is the plan for Maryland going forward? Now, we're not asking about a timeline because viruses, pandemics don't work on timelines, not timelines that we are accustomed to thinking about. Rather, what are the metrics? What are the goals that we as a community need to meet in order to come out of this pandemic a stronger community? So, Indivisible Montgomery has always worked together as a community. We've always had community goals. Our ultimate goal has always been having a new president sworn in on January 20th, 2021. But we also have goals prior to that, winning the election on November 3rd of this year, winning 2019 elections, winning 2018 elections, winning 2017 elections, and so on. We always have goals that are right in front of us while we're always looking towards that major goal at the very end. So while the major goal at the very end of this pandemic is to have vanquished this coronavirus, and so that we can all go back to our normal lives, so that we can be activists, so that we can work our best to get Donald Trump out of office. But we need goals leading up to that. And the question to the governor would be, what are the goals leading up to that? And it's important because once we have those goals, once we understand them as a community, that's something we can pull together and work towards. And if it takes weeks or months to reach those goals, we are willing as a community to do that. I think everyone hopes that it ends sooner, but I don't think anyone should be under the impression that it is going to end, in weeks. We may be doing this for months. But keeping people together and working towards a common goal for that length of time under these kinds of circumstances require that we meet intermediate goals along the way. And that's the kind of thing that we want to be talking to the governor about. So a few closing thoughts. So the governor changed the primary for Maryland to June 2nd. It was April 28th. If you've already requested your mail-in ballot, fantastic. Hopefully the governor had some forethought as into choosing June 2nd, possibly thinking that we'd be able to congregate and go about and cast our votes in person. But if not, that should come out in the discussions about goals that we want to be talking to his office about. Anyway, even if the primary does happen on June 2nd, request your absentee ballot, your mail-in ballot. That is the best way to make sure that you get your vote in and counted, and you're not stranded on election day, not being able to go find your polling station. So, and finally, I want to say to the members of the Asian community here in Montgomery and anywhere else who may be viewing this, we stand with you. We understand that the president and the president's cabinet are fanning the flames of racial hatred by labeling this virus the Chinese virus or the Wuhan virus. It's completely unacceptable. Let's call it by what the experts call it. The virus itself is SARS-CoV-2, and the disease is COVID-19. So we will not stand for any kind of hatred or racism at all in our community, and we stand with you in these times. 6 feet apart, of course, but we stand with you nonetheless. So I hope you are all doing what you can to stay safe and stay healthy, and we hope to see you all soon. Bye.